What's up everybody, I'm Jeff from Tumus Design, and in today's video we're going to go over what all goes into making 3D items on your CNC, and this isn't going to be like a super in-depth video, more so going over all the steps and what goes into making 3D items, and if 3D items are even for you. We make this two-sided bowl, along with this double-sided chisel mallet, and we're actually going to give this away in the video, so stick around. So I just went down the 3D carving wormhole not too long ago, so I figured it'd be a good time to make a video and kind of just go over what it takes to get into it, what bits you need, is it hard, is it easy, stuff like that. And it's not going to be a super in-depth video, but I'm going to kind of just show you what all goes into it to see if it's something you're even interested in. So first off, we're going to start with CNC bits. What bits do you need? So I've been sharing this journey on Instagram, and I think a lot of people assume you need a bunch of bits to do this. You do not. You need clearing bits and detail bits. You can simply use a 1/4 inch down cut and it'll be just fine. Or you can use something bigger like this 3/4 inch bowl bit to remove material a little faster. I use a 1/2 inch bit just because I have a 1/2 inch collet, but these work just as fine. Might just take a little longer. And then for the detail bits, you can use something like this that's very fine that you would use on an intricate 3D carving, which is like a picture or something with a ton of detail. For most basic stuff, this 1/4 inch ball nose will be just fine. So yeah, I'll link to all these in the description. So now that you have a couple bits, you have a CNC, you need some files. You can either purchase the files, which starting out I'd highly recommend because 3D modeling is a whole nother world in itself. People literally go to school for it, and it's just, this is a lot on its own, let alone trying to learn how to 3D model. So I would start out, buy a couple files, and if it really speaks to you, go down that rabbit hole and try to learn how to make them yourself. You can use Shaper 3D, Fusion, Aspire. I mean, YouTube has thousands of answers for you. The easiest bet would be buy the files from me or someone on Etsy. Just type in 3D files, STL files on Etsy or Google, and you'll get endless results. But you can't carve every single 3D file because we only have 3-axis CNCs, we don't have any sort of rotary, so you're slightly limited, but after you carve a couple, you'll kind of see what you can and can't carve. And then for software, I use VCarve Pro. I actually made a course on how to do a two-sided 3D spoon. I actually have it right here. So you can carve this both sides on the CNC. That's what the course will be. It'll be an in-depth course with VCarve Pro, and then you get the file and you get to make it alongside me. Big fan of VCarve Pro and Vectric. I do not have Aspire because it's like $2,000 or something crazy. Easel just added a 3D feature. Wasn't too impressed. I opened it and was like, nah, way too simple. It just didn't have anything I needed. It's very cut and paste. You can't really do anything but set up. Carveco, that's a good one. Onefinity's, this machine here is Onefinity. They've been offering a free year when you purchase a machine, so a lot of people have been using that. I would say that's very similar to VCarve Pro or Vectric. Most higher end software should have the ability to carve 3D. It's just how well and how many features they offer. So the first ones I'm going to show you is this chisel mallet. This was actually my first 3D model. I designed this myself and cut it. This was my first attempt at 3D. So it's 2 halves. We'll carve it in 2 halves, then glue it together. And then there's also this, which is just a spoon. I call it a spatula, but where you just 3D cut one side and then you just shape the back side so you don't have to like flip it and learn how to do all that. So starting out, I'd probably just do a one-sided 3D carve, which is what we're going to go to into the software. Just give you a quick rundown of how to like make this kind of stuff. So we're going to be hopping into some software. We are using VCarve Pro. You do not need Aspire to cut 3D models. You can cut everything in VCarve Pro, you just can't model in 3D. So this is one I cut later. Start a new one. Okay, so we're just going to guess on this. We're just going to say it's roughly 12 by 5, and then I think it's like 1.5, and we'll change this in a minute. And then we're going to do a single-sided job today. This is where you change it single-side or double-side. Then to import the file, we're going to go to modeling. And we're going to go to my 3D files. We're going to do a single-sided half mallet. So here's the importer. And you know, this just changes the view. So I like it like this. We're going to center it import. So we're not going to do two-sided. We're just going to do a single side, so we don't really need anything underneath it. And then our total mallet thickness is 1.2246, which we're going to bottom it out. So if we were doing a two-sided carve, you would do something like this, which is what would tell the software where to split your two-sided carve. But we're doing a single, so we're just going to bottom that out, and then we're going to import. Okay, so now we have our mallet in the software. I'm going to go back to sizing because now we know how big it is. Do 11. 12 by 5 is actually pretty good. Gives you enough cushion on each side. Then I'm going to set the mallet thickness, the thickness of the material. So right here is our model thickness, 1.22. So we're just going to say 1.23. That tiny bit's not going to matter in this situation. Okay, so we're going to set that. And that'll change our thickness. So if we come back over here to our modeling tab, this is our thickness. So I try to get it as close to that number as I can. I use a planer, so I run it through the planer until I get it as close as I can with the calipers. It doesn't need to be perfect in this instance, but you can have it a little thick and the machine will probably just use the machine to mill it down to where it needs to be. I'm going to cut two of these at the same time, but you could cut one side each, but I'd rather not change the bit, so we're actually going to double the 11. So I'm just going to copy and paste that. And rotate it. Select both of them. Center. 11 was way too much. Let's try 8. Okay, I like the look of that. So this is the size of material we need for this carve. 12 by 7 by 1.23. And then the two-sided tape will hold these in place. But if you're worried, I would come into modeling. And here's our two pieces. And you could go to clip art and add tabs. So you would just drag this on here. And then you would have your tab. You'd have to mess with it, but you get the basic point. Okay, so I mean, that's essentially the harder part. Getting it in here is getting it in here and set up is what I struggled with right away. So we're done with the modeling tab at this point. We do not no longer need the modeling tab. So let's make some toolpaths. So these are all the toolpaths in Vectric. And here's our 3D carving. We have a 3D roughing toolpath and a 3D finish toolpath. So we're going to use the roughing toolpath to remove most of the material. So I'm going to use a 1/2 inch end mill to clear, but you could use whatever clearing bit you have. A 1/4 inch is fine. It just takes longer. And I'm just going to modify these because that's a different application. So then you have these. Once you set your bit, you have your model boundary, how you want it to cut. It shows all the highlighted area here, what it'll remove. And then we have our boundary offset. You can play with this a little bit and look at it in preview. It just says how far it carves around your piece. And this is just the orientation it carves and it shows you here. So it'll go across the material, or it'll go Z level and do the circle, which is what's typically fastest. And then you can run a profile or none. I'm just going to run, we'll do the profile last. This, you don't really have to mess with this stuff right away. You'll figure that out as you go. I'm using a big bit, so I'm going to ramp in. Okay, there's our clearing toolpath. Now let's do our, this is the finishing one, which will make it extra smooth. So for this, a 1/4 inch is fine. 1/4 inch, ball nose, select. Don't need that bit. So I can go pretty fast since I'm not doing a big step over. And I'll explain the step over a little later, but it's essentially how much the bit overlaps with each pass. So a lower step over will make it a lot cleaner finish than a higher step over. Under 10 is pretty clean. 10 to 15, you're going to have some sanding. Okay, so we're just going to do an 8, which is plenty for this, because when we glue it together, we're going to have to sand it anyway, so I'm not that... So let's actually... We're going to sand it anyway, so let's just do like 12. It'll go a lot faster. Okay, and that, my friends, is pretty much it. So now we're going to preview the toolpath just to ensure it cuts how I expect. Okay, we're getting some weird stuff here, so I'm assuming that's just an offset issue. If it's not cutting all the way past the edge, it's most likely the offset. Let's just go to edit. Yeah, it's way too small, so let's do, we'll do half of 1/4 inch, so 0.125, and see if that clears up that weirdness. Okay, it looks like the toolpath goes further down now, so let's preview visible and just see if it erases this weird edge stuff. There we go, just like that. Perfect. And this is where your hold down method's important. You want to line up your double-sided tape with the bottom of these mallets, or roughly where they're going to be. I just used like the 2-inch thick masking tape and I haven't had any issues. But you could also, if you're worried, go in here and add them tabs. Them tabs would be a surefire way to make sure these things don't break free when you're cutting them. Estimated cut time. That's actually pretty fast. If you have a smaller machine, I wouldn't be surprised if this would take 30 to 50 minutes, maybe even an hour. 3D carving isn't exactly fast. So yeah, let's hop out of here and cut this file.
And here's a good example of the step over. So all these little lines, the lower the step over, the fewer lines you're gonna see. This was, I wanna say 12% step over.
Okay, and then to save a little time, we're gonna go into a 3D file that I already created. So you're gonna import the file the same way, with the import 3D model button over here, and then set your drawing to relatively the size of your piece so you know how big a piece you need to complete the carve. And then when you come into modeling, the only thing different you're gonna have to do is add tabs. And there's this little tabs feature in here when you create your job size. You click the double-sided in the job setup. And in the modeling, you're gonna have to add tabs once you do that. And to do that is actually pretty easy. When you download Vectric, you get clip art, and you go into, there's a 3D tabs clip art. And you just click these tabs and drag them on here and add them where you want them. And then you can modify the size to make sure your piece don't break free when you carve both sides. And then this button up here switches sides, so it shows you both sides of what it looks like. Same over here. So here's a breakdown. I already cut this, so this is just a rough breakdown. It's gonna take 46 minutes to cut both sides of these. I could probably get it a little faster with some practice. Okay, so then we're gonna preview all toolpaths. So once you simulate both sides, you click this button up here, and it'll show you what your two-sided carve will look like. So adding tabs is the only difference, and then you're gonna have to create toolpaths for both sides. And then when you flip it, you can either use dowels or screws. I just mark from the center and use screws because I'm gonna have to sand these tabs off anyway, so if this is off a fraction of an inch, I do not care. But if it's a super detailed drawing, you'll have to figure out how to do dowels and whatnot. But okay, yeah, so there we go. Okay, there's two ways to do the flip. You can use dowels, which you would add the dowels on top with the end mill, and then you flip it, and then add the dowels into your wasteboard, so it would line up perfect. I'm too lazy for all that. And this stuff I'm carving isn't that intricate, so I'm gonna use screws and my grid. So my grid will keep everything aligned, and then I'll flip it, and it'll be in essentially the same spot, and I'll mark from the center on both sides. This stuff isn't that intricate, so if it's off like a thousandth of an inch, I don't care. This spoon or this mallet, I'll be able to easily blend and you'll never know. This is definitely the thickest one I've done. So hopefully it works. That should be about enough. Okay, line it up with the grid. So now that I have it straight, I'm just gonna put a few pencil lines around here. Just lightly. So when I do flip it, I know it's as close as possible. Uh-oh.
Okay, it was going good. And then I tried to clear this whole chunk in one pass. So I want to go back in the software and see if I can figure that out. And hopefully we can save it.
And that's why you always watch the simulation, because, I mean, I did watch it twice, but I overlooked it. So my border, let's see if I can show you in preview. Okay, this is good enough to show you, but I'm kind of glad this happened because it shows that not everything is easy. Inlays are hard, 3D carving is hard, it all takes practice. But what was happening was it was going around doing the finish path, and because this outline here wasn't big enough, it tried to clear this whole 1-inch chunk of material on the last finishing path outline. And my onefinity is not going to clear that. So it snubbed out the machine. Hopefully we can fix it, but we're going to fix it right now. So let's edit this, and we'll just add a boundary offset of an extra 0.5, because I'm already cutting it close on the end, so I don't want to remove too much, which is why I hugged it so close, because I glued this up in hopes that it would fit, and I just didn't measure my model well. So here we are. Live and learn. Okay, let's calculate it and see if this, well, I know it fixes the problem, but okay, so let's reset all this, preview it. You can already see in here, it started to clear this part out a lot better. Okay, let's hope that works.
Okay, so here's my janky setup now. So it rammed so hard it snubbed it out and I lost my zero. So I put tape on here, and hopefully my shoddy zero is close enough. Wish me luck.
All right, holy crap. So it lined up pretty good. So I think we're gonna save this. The onefinity cannot single pass an 1.25" cherry and walnut. I mean, maybe though. Maybe. The bit didn't bend. The spindle actually snubbed out, and when the spindle stopped, it went which snubbed out the onefinity. So yeah, let's flip this thing and hope for the best. And it just goes to show how strong these screws hold. There's 3 screws in here, and that thing didn't budge. All right, remember we have the pencil marks? I drill 6 holes in here because when I flip it, I try not to put it in the same holes, just in case it catches an old hole and shifts it. Okay. Putty knife, the old screw nubbins. Hey! We saved it. I wasn't too sure we were going to save it, but the old tape trick with the zero, it was pretty close. All right, I can't tell how well it's aligned. It looks pretty dang close, but good enough to be able to blend it. I like to test all the files before I sell them to you guys. So since this was pure chaos, I'll cut another one and I'll keep that one. But we'll give this one away. I'll hide Manny, this guy, find him hidden in the video, post the timestamp in the comments, and I'll send this to you free of charge. US only because shipping's expensive. But yeah, I'm going to start including the car files with my 3D files that I sell, just so it'll give you guys a jump start and you can just open it right up in VCarve Pro if you have that software. But yeah, I'm going to go cut this out on the bandsaw and see how it turned out. Okay, so it turned out pretty good. You can see it was shifted, I don't know, not much, but it was shifted a little bit. And that's where it bit in when it halted to a stop. But you can kind of see how off it is. It's, I don't know, 1/1000th of an inch maybe. But I can easily blend that with a sander. Top's very smooth. The side edges were kind of as rough as I expected. But pretty sweet.
Then to show you another example, we'll just quickly zoom through this bowl carve. Then here's a quick look at all the stuff we made today. First off, the mallet, cherry and walnut. The bowl, made of walnut. And then the other poplar mallet.
And that's the end of the video, guys. Hope you enjoyed. I'll link everything down in the description along with the bits, all the files for all these items, and the course. Make sure you check out the course. I think it's going to be super helpful for people trying to get into this. It'll be like a 30-minute video with as much detail as I can get in there. So I hope you guys all have a wonderful day, and I hope you learned something.